The English actually had gone into Belgium to defend Belgium, but the Germans moved so fast they drove the English to Dunkirk at the very edge of Belgium, and then across the English Channel back to England. So they drove the English off the continent of Europe and back to the island of Great Britain. Um, and then they invaded France. They invaded France at the beginning of World War One, but never reached Paris. Within a month, France completely surrendered to Germany, and here you see Adolf Hitler doing what the Germans could never do during World War One, and that is reach Paris. One of the things that Hitler did, because he never forgot how unfairly he thought the Germans were treated at the end of World War One, he took the train car where the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War One was signed, and he brought it out to Paris and forced the French back onto the same train car to surrender to the Germans. So if you don't think World War I was important to the Germans, it was. French government that was still intact fled to England, and they operated in England during the entire war. They actually worked with their secret operatives in England that worked in France called the French Underground. Their military moved off the continent into Africa mostly, where the French colonies were, and the French did fight all the way up Europe, and French troops did march back into Paris when Paris was liberated. Their underground was a pretty amazing network. Those guys put their lives on the line, and they disrupted transmissions. They assassinated German leaders. They cut communication lines. They spied. Without the French underground, a lot of great information the Allies had during the war probably wouldn't have got, and also it forced the Germans to focus on places like Paris, where they thought they were secure when they could be sending troops somewhere else. And finally, why did the Germans have great success? What was it about this Blitzkrieg that worked so well? Well, like I already said, the Germans had this incredibly fast-moving, powerful modern army, the most modern army in the world at that time. The Germans had bigger guns, more powerful guns that could shoot farther, that could reload quicker, that could shoot more rounds, more machine guns, bigger tanks, larger artillery that could be moved faster. It was just a better army all around. And instead of having tanks be part of the infantry, which the Americans, French, and English had done during World War I, the Germans created separate divisions for their tanks, which allowed them to move in packs. Also allowed them to move independently of the infantry, so they could go where they were needed. When the infantry didn't need them, the tanks went somewhere else. So plus their tanks moved very fast, and they were more powerful. The German tanks were the most powerful tanks of the entire war. The Russians, the English, the French, the Americans never made a tank as powerful as a Panzer or a Tiger tank that the Germans had. Now that France was secured, Germany set its sights on Britain. All the resources of the continent, with the exception of England, the continent of Europe could be put onto attacking and invading Britain, which hadn't been done in hundreds of years. Problem was, Britain, as an island nation, had the largest navy in the world. So Germany knew it couldn't probably have a huge army cross the English Channel to get to England, so they wanted to control the air. If Germany was going to control the water, if England was going to control the water, Germany was going to control the air. And they sent wave after wave after wave of huge bombing raids on cities like Manchester and Birmingham and Liverpool and London. And they didn't do that just to take out military targets. They did it to punish the English and to break the English citizens' will to fight. Absolutely outnumbered, the pilots of the Royal Air Force, mostly in these little, as you can see, these little planes called Spitfires, refused to give up, and it was the first loss for Hitler at the beginning of World War II. But it also showed the rest of the world that you could stand up to these guys. There was a way to beat them. And then in the next lecture, we'll talk about America's views of the war and what we did to prepare for the war. But that's the end of this lecture.